A big welcome to everyone to our Evening with Yves, brought to you by Oikocredit US and Oikocredit Canada in partnership with Oikocredit International. I'm Julie Scott, Board Vice Chair of Oikocredit Canada. We're really excited to bring you a personal perspective of Oikocredit's work in the field, featuring Yves Komaclo, Oikocredit International's West Africa Investments Manager. And before we introduce Yves, just a quick word about who we are. Oikocredit US and Oikocredit Canada are the North American affiliates of Oikocredit International, a 45-year-old global cooperative that works to improve living conditions in low-income countries. Oikocredit does so by investing in microfinance and small and medium-sized enterprises in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Our job here at Oikocredit US and Oikocredit Canada is to raise awareness and financial support in North America for these efforts. Since March 2020, Oikocredit International, like organizations all over the world, had to adapt in the face of COVID-19 and the pandemic. It had to change how it did business to take the health, safety, and economic challenges of its staff and partners into account. Today, we're going to get Yves' perspective on what it's like to deal with COVID-19 on the ground. We'll also ask him about new developments in West Africa, such as advancements in food processing. And we'll get his thoughts on the outlook for the region. Joining us today to introduce Yves and to introduce him is Matt Eldridge, the CEO of Oikocredit US. And Matt also happens to be Yves' business school classmate. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Julie. And hi, Yves. It's great to see you. How are you today?
I'm muted today, sorry. Yeah, I'm finding the mute button. Good to see you, Matt. Hello, everybody.
Well, it's great to see you, Yves. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as Julie mentioned, you and I were business school classmates at Yale, and that was what, 3 to 4 years ago?
Yeah, just a couple of years ago, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Yves, you'll be happy to know that I crowdsourced a few especially creative questions from our Yale classmates for today, so we'll save those for later. Let me start by telling folks a bit more about you. Actually, before I do that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome everyone who's joining today. We have quite a number of folks from all around the world, from the US and Canada, I see we have folks joining from Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, France, from Benin, from Côte d'Ivoire, and elsewhere. Thank you for everyone who's joining today, wherever you're connecting from. I'll now tell you a little bit more about Yves, in case you don't know. Yves Komaclo is Oikocredit International's investments manager for West Africa. And in this capacity, he manages a 60 million euro portfolio of more than 80 agriculture, renewable energy, and inclusive finance projects across the ECOWAS region. And prior to joining Oikocredit in 2009, Yves was division chief of internal audit at UBA Bank in Benin, and previously held roles at Tyco International in London, Booz Allen and Hamilton, the National Sports Lottery, and the African Development Bank. Yves is a graduate of Collège Stanislas de Paris, and holds a master's degree from École Centrale de Lyon and an MBA from Yale School of Management. Yves, when I first started at Oikocredit back in 2019, I had no idea that you were also working in the Oikocredit movement. It was a very pleasant surprise. Tell us, how did you come to work for Oikocredit, and what's kept you here for for more than 12 years now?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Julie, for the nice introduction as well. Yeah, you may, if we go back, I would say 20 or 25 years ago, when we were at the School of Management, we the school was preparing leaders for business and society. And I think that over the course of my career, I realized that I would say, I put myself as a local leader. I was not just involved in professional activities and in banking, but I was interested in actually seeing the impact of my decisions and the actions, the decision taken. I wanted to see them applied in my local community. So that was one of the reasons why I felt that after a long career in the Western world, that it was time for me also to come back home and to contribute. So I went into banking, but in banking, we provide significant support to the clients, but we don't actually measure the impact of what we of our finances. And then I came across an organization that was looking for a regional deputy regional manager at the time, and I felt that, wow, the main attraction at the time was the geographic scope, because when I was working before joining Oikocredit, I was working at the country level. So I was first attracted by the regional scope, so that in terms of activities, there was a impact, or there were projects ranging from Senegal down to Nigeria. If you look at the map of West Africa, that's quite a large area. But specifically, it was very interesting to see that there was an opportunity here to work for a global SACCO. What a SACCO is a credit and savings cooperative. And I had some exposure to those credit and savings cooperative at my town level, but I have never come across such organization at the global level. So I felt that that was a real way to have significant resources and experience built into that organization. So as much as I researched Oikocredit to prepare for my interviews, I feel, hey, there's something here. So, and on top of that, what was really interesting was that it was a genuine there was a genuine mission orientation in that organization. And I actually found out later that that was the truth. And every time I joined international staff calls, every time I joined general assemblies, and I have on a regular basis a confirmation of that we are one of the few organizations where strategy, mission are perfectly aligned with daily activities on the ground. In terms of activities on the ground, we also realized that over the years that Oikocredit is a real pioneer. There are a lot of instances where we are the first international investor. There are so many occasions where people come to office to get some of our insights, either friendly competitors, as I call them, or business partners or bankers or lawyers. So we really are a thought leader in the field of development finance, and that has been confirmed over the years. And yeah, the attraction is still here. Thanks.
Thanks, Yves. I'm glad to hear that, and it's really interesting to hear what drew you to Oikocredit, and that the mission was such a key part of that. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit last year, it affected everyone. And how did it affect you and your team's ability to continue furthering the mission? How did it affect you all personally? How did it affect Oikocredit's partners in the region?
Yeah, you may recall that we connected just at the outbreak last year. You and I connected, and we were very worried because the predictions were for like more than 5 million deaths for Africa. That was really the path that was envisaged for Africa with COVID. Well, as it turned out, things have not been as dire as we anticipated, but the situation is still serious. in terms of the office work, in line with Oikocredit's policy, we all worked from home for a significant period of time. I think in the office here, we are a team of 10 colleagues. And from March last year up to September, we mostly work from home with, oh, I need to increase the volume, I understand. Yeah.
It's not so much the volume, I think it's more the
okay. I will open the door. Hold on 1 second. Yeah.
Thanks, Yves. And while Yves adjusts that, I just want to remind folks that we'll have time for you to ask questions in a few minutes. We have some prepared questions, but we'll turn to your questions as well. You can go ahead and put those in the chat at any time, and my colleague Alina is monitoring that. You can indicate whatever you ask in the chat if you'd like to ask that question yourself when the time comes, or if you'd prefer that we go ahead and ask Yves that question, we're happy to do so. So feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time.
Yeah, coming back to COVID-19 and particularly I would say the spring, summer seasons last year, we were so restricted in terms of the international travel in line with Oikocredit's policy, but we were also following the government measures put in place as any other countries. So we worked from home. And like everybody else, we were busy with Teams and Zoom, and so we've done that very much from March to end of July, when the government has decided to partially lift some of the lockdown measures put in place, and that has helped us also to reconnect with some of the partners that we are supporting, but also to come out of the house just as everybody else. So in terms of the activities that we put in place while under lockdown, is that we've been able to work closer, at least virtually, to work closer with our partners. So in terms of activities that conducted with our partners, there were two aspects. There was support and training to the partners, particularly in the areas of business continuity planning, stress testing, which we had recommended prior to the crisis to some of the partners that were relatively weak to strengthen their risk management. But obviously, with the COVID, we got to a point where it was mandatory. On the other side, which was more on the internal side, we decided that we had to monitor the performance of our partner much more closely. So under normal circumstances, we collect quarterly reportings, and generally these are sufficient to identify weaknesses or alerts. But under crisis, we had a much closer set of monitoring to conduct. So we shifted from the quarterly to the monthly risk assessment of each of our partners, and we convened at the global level together with our colleagues from Latin America, Asia, and the colleagues in Amersfoort. We convened on the trends. And we monitored, we obviously, risk management was very high on the agenda, not just of the team here in Côte d'Ivoire, but also at the management board level, supervisory board level, as well as in our interactions with other microfinance investment vehicles. So we had the conversation not just within Oikocredit investment teams, but also with other investors. Those measures put in place at the international level have been actually very helpful in tracking the performance of our partners, but also in showing that we were there for them. And in retrospect, I think that they've appreciated that. Although we did that not just as a way of supporting that, but also as preventing cases of trouble moving down the road. So we also, in terms of relationship between the team members, we also informally try to find out about each other and our respective families. One of our colleagues lost his father quite early on during the crisis, and that has actually got everybody in the team quite closer and more sensitive about what could happen to each other's family members. So I think that has remained the same since then. And I think that's an important takeaway from that crisis for us.
Thanks, Yves. Well, first, let me say that I'm very sorry to hear about your colleague's father. COVID vaccines have started to become widespread in many countries in Europe and North America, but the rollout has been far more limited elsewhere, and the fairness of this distribution has rightly been called into question. What is vaccine access like in West Africa, where you are? And in light of that, how have social and economic conditions changed over the last 18 months?
Thanks for that. It's a tough question because it's difficult to separate anecdotes from real facts, from conspiracies, and the fact that we are all now very much online, it just amplifies those trends. So I've tried to pull out a few statistics. We have a very low level of testing, as we discussed just before the call. If, for example, in the country of Benin, with about 12 million inhabitants, since March 2020, we only have 24,000 positive cases, and that's the number of cases that we have in a single day in most countries, in most Western countries, even off-peak. So that's a major concern, at least from my point of view. I think that the countries and governments should be testing much more aggressively. And with that level of testing, with that low level of testing, I'm not even telling you about the vaccination rate. So there's like 5.5% of the population that is vaccinated in Senegal. There's like 3.5% here in Côte d'Ivoire. And the average for Africa is 6% of vaccinated rate. So as you can see, even just to get to 50%, I am very concerned that we still have a very, very long way to go. And there are several factors that are conspiring to that. As I mentioned, first of all, there's access to the COVAX. COVAX is the global partnership to provide vaccines to the underdeveloped countries, which has been, to my point of view, a little underfunded. But even saying that, even when we get vaccines here, people are not rushing to get those vaccines. So that's an even bigger concern. Or there is maybe people are choosing between the type of vaccine. So people would prefer Pfizer to AstraZeneca, but obviously we at times we have shortages of one or the other. So that's a big issue. And one of the big things that people don't realize is with this low level of testing, we are unlikely to come out of the crisis with either the health crisis and, more importantly, the economic crisis. So I think, and then that's a message that has not been clearly articulated by the government across the board here in West Africa. But that's my personal view. And that's the situation. On the other hand, and I would say because the population overall is quite young, remember there's less than 5% of the population that is above 65. Those people that are really at risk, it's a minuscule part of the population. Yeah, someone has quipped last time that, yeah, by the time a person could be affected or at risk of serious cases, could be at risk of a serious case of COVID, they are dead, because most people don't make it to their 60th birthday anyway. So I think that is also one of the reasons why our hospitals are still operating at relative capacity, even though we don't have so many, that much in terms of resources, in terms of oxygen and so on, and emergency respiratory units. But I think that, yeah, we don't have too many cases of serious cases. Maybe that's in relation to the population age. Yeah, so in terms of, yeah, I made some notes. I was just answering your question without looking back at my notes. I need to, yeah, one important aspect is, yeah, the spread of conspiracy theories, such as like the Western world is conspiring against Africans. That's why they want to inject those vaccines. Unfortunately, there's a large minority of the population that believes that. There are religious beliefs that are really slowing down the process of vaccination. There's the fact that, yeah, we still have economies that are really informal. So, and that is also one reason why implementing lockdown measures are not really effective. Most people live on a day-to-day basis, so they can't afford not to go and sell their product for more than 3 or 4 days in a row. So, and vice versa. Many people do not have access to freezers, so they go to the markets to buy their food on a daily basis as well. So, so putting in place lockdowns, first of all, it's difficult to enforce, and secondly, is quite ineffective. So, yeah. So people are, yes, I would say the compliance to the distanciation measures, yeah, is sketchy at best, as I would say. Yeah, sorry, Matt, I'm going into all sorts of directions, but I hope that helps.
That's good, Yves. That's actually quite helpful to give us, I think, a more holistic picture of what some of the challenges and how the pandemic has affected folks, you know, whether by age or, you know, many of the factors that you mentioned. For those folks who are joining us today who are less familiar with the specific work that Oikocredit does, how would you describe the types of investments that you're involved with, that you and your team are involved with in West Africa?
Yeah, thanks. So Oikocredit as a whole, we are invested in renewable energy, agriculture, and financial inclusion. I will try to break it down further. So what do we mean by financial inclusion is that we are a wholesaler for financial services. I would like to take a step back, sorry. Oikocredit, our mission is to provide, I would say, a life of dignity to low-income communities, disadvantaged communities. So how do we translate that mission into the daily activities that on the investment side here? So there's one way of doing it is to finance the financial inclusion sector, so that we finance microfinance institutions, so that in turn, those microfinance institutions provide small-scale funding to micro-entrepreneurs, cooperatives, women traders, etc. So that's I would say, the main Oikocredit activity. We have extended that support to microfinance institutions by supporting as well SME banks. So the micro entrepreneurs, as they grow into micro and small enterprises, and then into small enterprises, will have higher funding needs or more diversified funding needs that may, in some cases, not be provided by the standard microfinance institutions, and those are more adequately provided by the SME banks. So we on a very selective basis, partner with some commercial banks that have a clear SME finance strategy, and we support those. So that's our interventions in financial inclusions. And I would also extend that not just to pure commercial banks, but also to leasing companies and so on, that have a clear focus on providing access to finance for those SMEs. The second part, yeah, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Yves.
Yeah, the second part is renewable energy. So we tackle that field of energy using access to energy lenses. So everything that runs from solar home systems, very popular today, particularly in East Africa, in India, and it's beginning to become popular as well here in West Africa, whereby companies will provide to individual clients domestic solar kits, which are typically monitored and paid off on a pay-as-you-go basis using mobile technology. And so what we do is we provide working capital facilities to those companies that are installing those systems. So in effect, it's similar to microfinance in the sense that we provide funding to the portfolio of receivables of those solar home systems companies. And there has been a tremendous development in that sector. And that has been widely used by governments across Africa in particular to reduce or to improve the level of electrification, rural electrification rates. So today it's more effective for governments to roll out solar home systems, and then I will speak also about mini grids, then to pull wires to those sparsely dispersed population. So in terms of renewable energy, we are also very much active in mini grids. So mini grids are community-based renewable energy facilities, whereby we partner with organizations that have concessions or that have the capacity to extend the national grid to areas, typically rural areas that are quite remote from the grid. So these are significant projects that we are working on at the moment. And then the third one, which is quite important for our call today, is agriculture. So agriculture is obviously a very wide sector, and I think it's one of the most effective way for us in the investment world or in the development finance world to reduce poverty in a sustainable manner, and in I would say in a responsible manner as well. So in our investments in agriculture revolve mainly around certified commodities. So for example, certified coffee for mostly East Africa and Latin America. But if I zoom in here to West Africa, we are very much active in certified cocoa. In terms of certified cocoa, I need to explain what we mean by certified there, because there are a number of certification or internationally recognized certifications. The classic ones are fair trade. So fair trade is a certification whereby we ensure that smallholder farmers get a decent price for their product. We also have organic certifications showing that local smallholder farmers follow appropriate rules grow their crop and get the crops to market. And then we have also UTS and Rainforest Alliance, which are also environmentally oriented certifications. So in our work, we obviously at global level, we have decided on the number of value chains in which we are going to operate, which are very much SDG supportive. And we feel that cocoa is very much a commodity that will help over the next 10 years. Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana to a lesser extent, which are the two largest producers of cocoa globally, to achieve their SDG goals, or at least the first SDG out of the 17. I think that the first 7 or 8 are very important. Other commodities that are important in terms of SDG alignment or SDG agenda alignment are maize, rice, not just, I would say, for food security, but also for women participation. One of the drawbacks of cocoa is that there's a very low level of women participation, at least at the planting level. They are involved in other activities such as harvest, drying, the primary processing, but they are not as involved as others as other value chain. Another value chain we are very much interested in is cashew. We love cashews, and not just with a nice snack after hours, and it's soon going to be nice after hours for me. So yeah, and but also because cashews were originally planted in as trees to fight against desertification. So if you look at a map of West Africa, there are cashew trees are very much planted in the Sahel region. And today we speak about Sahel mostly about terrorism issues, but originally the Sahel region was an area of concern because of the progress of that Sahara desert was making in the countries. So cashew trees are very important for that respect, but cashew processing is also very important because in most cashew processing plants, you will see that there's about 75 to 80% of the workforce that is women oriented, and not just at I would say at the operating level, but also often in supervision roles as well. So we are very much focused on those two value chains, cocoa and cashew.
That's great, Yves. Thank you. And yeah, we also don't want to stand in the way between you and cashews later, of course. And some of you may be wondering why we called this program An Evening with Yves when it's sort of late afternoon in where you are, Yves, in parts of Europe, and here in the United States on the West Coast, it's the sun hasn't even really come up yet. So we just thought it would be a fun turn of phrase. Yves, before I go on, I have a number of other questions, but I want to make sure that folks who've tuned in today have a chance to ask questions that are on their minds. And I'd encourage you to go ahead and put your question in the chat. My colleague Alina is tracking those. If you'd like to ask your own question when it comes to your turn, please indicate that. And if you'd rather we ask the question, we're happy to do so. Why don't I go ahead and turn it over to Alina now. Alina, who's next?
Sorry, I was typing. Shall I go through the questions that we've received so far? The first one was from, and she asked the question, well, actually 2 questions about COVID. First, she wanted to know if the situation was as bad as it is with malaria and AIDS or HIV, or if it's milder. And she wondered if the vaccination rate is that low because people don't trust the vaccines either.
Yeah, so I'll start with the end. Yes, I think the vaccination rate, I think as I mentioned, there's a lot of conspiracy circulating, and I think that there are some very strong voices against vaccine, and unfortunately, the governments have not been able to overcome those fears. I would say that there's also general apathy. I think that some people are just not concerned about it, and it looks like maybe it's some of the people who are actively seeking vaccines or testing are those who will have to travel. I think that could be, but that's my personal view. I think that this could be reasons why the intake is remaining quite low. In addition to the factors that I mentioned earlier in terms of religious beliefs or the informality of the population. The level of informality in the economy are also driving this. So, for example, the governments are quite worried about, for example, forcing vaccinated people to enter official buildings because, they don't know how that will be taken. But I'm sure that within the next 2 to 3 months, we'll get to that point where they will have to come up with those type of measures. In terms of malaria and HIV, I think it's a very significant question, and I think that it is essential that the efforts to fight against malaria steps up, because I think that it affects us a lot more than COVID and other diseases. And I know that there are, on the back of the clinical trials put onto the COVID test, the COVID vaccines, there are a lot of initiatives now trying to use some of the same ARN messenger to come up with vaccines against malaria. And I'm very much sure that the uptake of malaria vaccine will be higher than the uptake of COVID test, because it's a real threat, and it's something that most Africans have experienced. HIV is more delicate. There's less, I would say, there's less information in the general press about the fight against HIV. However, at a government level and Ministry of Health level, there's still a lot of work being done and a lot of international cooperation. So I think I'm very hopeful on the HIV/AIDS situation, and I would say even more hopeful than on the malaria. What happened was, and that has helped us also to prepare for the COVID outbreak, that 3-4 years ago we had an outbreak of Ebola in the area. And that was a significant wake-up call for our Ministry of Health and our public health authorities. And I think that has helped indirectly, that has helped us to prepare, at least to a certain extent, for the COVID outbreak. So in terms of emergency response, I think that there was a bit of a preparation for some of our countries here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Shall I just continue with other questions? What are the indicators you're looking for from a monthly reporting to understand the business health?
Okay, yes. So I would respond to that question, I would say more tangentially. What we want to do, there was the question of monitoring the performance during the crisis. And I would say that was mostly spring and summer of last year. So obviously the first criteria, the first indicator that we were looking at was the level of liquidity at the microfinance institution. And I would say, and that's for everybody, even liquidity for cooperatives and even liquidity for households. So that was very much the first indicator that we were looking for, and we informed ourselves on that monitoring and that indicator to see what type of actions we could take. An example of that is when we had a microfinance institution in a rural area that was faced with a liquidity tension, we could then decide to defer a payment to Oikocredit. We call it a payment holiday, or we could link up with other investors that were all lending to that microfinance institution to take the same measure at the same time, to release some of the pressure, liquidity pressure on that microfinance institution. Obviously, we wanted our partners to keep, first of all, to make the necessary adjustments to their operating model, in the sense that they would have to work remotely. Therefore, they would have to equip themselves with adequate internet facilities to continue operating. We would want them to continue paying their salaries, particularly with no social coverage from our governments to pay for this. So we accepted for us, the lenders, and in particular Oikocredit, to take a back seat in terms of imposing cash outlays from those institutions. So that's one type of situation that we had to deal with at the peak of the crisis. Now, outside the crisis, or let's say in a post-crisis environment such as today, the tension is moving away from liquidity to solvency. So what has happened over the 9 months, over the past 9 months, 12 months, is that many of those organizations have had their profitability level or their margins significantly decrease. And that obviously affects their level of equity and their future ability to absorb such shocks. So today the conversation has shifted towards solvency and capitalization. And we are working in conjunction with other like-minded organizations, investors, to see how we can support those beneficiaries to rebuild their solvency. So that, as you can see, that's the type of thing that we monitor. On the technical side, we also provide technical assistance, and there were a range of such support. So in addition to the financial support, we also want to provide capacity building to our partners. Examples of that were there was the Oikocredit Solidarity Fund, COVID Solidarity Fund, which is an emergency fund that was provided on a selective basis to some of the more, I would say, exposed partners. We have also created a CEO dialogue. So we organized a platform where the CEO of our partners, of our microfinance institution partners, will share their experiences of handling the crisis. So there were a number of webinars that we have organized like this over the course of, I would say, the past 18 months. So today, yeah, we're continuing to monitor the performance, and both on the financial and the social side. Back to you, Alina.
Thank you. Ms. Rita Joldersma wanted to know if the partners from your region are mainly in Côte d'Ivoire or also in neighboring countries.
Yes. Okay. They are quite spread out because we have been in the region since '94. The office in Côte d'Ivoire has been opened in '94, and the office in Ghana in 1994 as well. And we have been supporting organizations since the 90s across the region. So the name Oikocredit is quite well known, particularly in agriculture and microfinance. So we have a number of partners in Senegal, across the country in Senegal, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, as well as Benin and Nigeria, as well as and Ghana. So I wouldn't say that Côte d'Ivoire has the more clients. However, in agriculture, yes, we have more clients in the Ivory Coast here, because just because we have now, under the current strategy, 2018-2022, we are focusing on cashew and cocoa, and because cocoa and cashews, particularly cocoa, is mainly grown in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. So that's, I would say that it's a consequence of that decision to concentrate on those value chains. But in microfinance, I would say that the other markets are even more developed than the market of Cote d'Ivoire.
Thank you, Yves. And then Mr. Wongla Kenley had a few questions. Would you be able to say them yourself?
Yes, Mr. Komaclo, yeah, hi, yeah. Yes, I was asking what the Oikocredit strategy to support fishermen and agricultural sector in our countries, and what are the specific product that you have developed to support the impact of COVID in the agricultural sector. For those who have a new enterprises, the startup enterprises, or the enterprises that have been impacted by the COVID. That's what the first question. Yep. The second one is related to specifically to the fishery sector. You know that the fishery sector in West Africa part is really this sector. Many women are working in this sector, and we have many difficulties to support them financially, and they have a strong issue to have access to the classic financial system. And what is this Oikocredit strategy to support those people?
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, can you mute yourself? Yeah, okay. So there are a number of questions that are interlinked. So let me start by saying how we intervene in microfinance. So as I explained at the beginning of our conversation with Matt, we are wholesalers, which means that we cannot provide, let's say, $2,000 loans to individual petty trader or fishermen. We provide funding to organizations that are closest to those communities because they know them well. So what we do in the case of Benin, for example, we would provide funding to organizations such as Vital Finance or Alide and others who have branches in close proximity of these trades markets or farms or fisheries because I think we don't want to take the job of our clients, of our partners. I think that's an important rule in finance. Every person should follow their lane, I would say. So it's important that we distinguish ourselves from the players at local level because we don't want to step on their toes. Secondly, as any credit person will tell you, the proximity and the knowledge of the client is even more important than the credit methodology. It's very important for those who know the clients best to take the decision of the investment decision. I'll give you an example. In the past, we have financed a cooperative of fishermen, and then they were not paying. And then when we went for the debt recovery, every time we went for the debt recovery, they went at sea. So we were never able to recover, to totally recover the amounts that we had lent to those cooperatives. So yeah, which is why it's important to allow those women, first of all, to organize themselves, preferably as cooperatives or limited companies, to formalize them. It's essential that they get formalized in order for them to benefit from local funding. So either at the microfinance level or the bank level. It's a very important issue that you are raising, the fact that a number of organizations or a number of people, particularly women, are not able to get access to finance because they are not able to provide evidence of their own identity, or they're not able to provide evidence of their house addresses. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and that's not, I would say, down to the financial sector. It's more the administration, etc. Yeah, I'm happy to speak to you offline. We're here in Côte d'Ivoire. We have a conference in a couple of days on the development of fisheries, and I'm sure that there could be some interesting lessons to be applied to Benin. Thank you.
Yves, thank you. We're getting close to the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I think we have time for at least one more question, and you may be relieved to know we're not going to have time to ask some of these creative questions from our classmates for you. We're getting great questions from the audience today. Alina, who's next?
Someone asks, can you please tell us more about investing in green technology in West Africa?
Yeah, so I'm not so familiar with green technology. I will try to answer by breaking it down by saying that there's green inclusive finance, which is a significant area of finance moving forward, particularly in climate adaptation and the management, the fight against biodiversity losses. So that's one angle. I suspect you are also talking about in terms of renewable energy, particularly in terms of what type of technologies are we now applying in the waste management, in biomass. There are a few initiatives on that, but it's still on a low scale level. So it's difficult today to provide commercial level lending or equity investing in those areas. We still have some of the technologies here implemented at pilot level rather than commercial rollouts. We have had one case of the project BioColor, which is a large-scale biomass using palm and cocoa waste, but it's a significant amount. It's in the $1 million plus type of scale, which is way above what I can reach. So in terms of mid-range for green technology, yes, that's what I can say. So the application of either wind farms. We've worked on a couple of wind farms, but the deals have not closed. We prefer to work on solar energy, solar technologies, because they are directly impacting the disadvantaged communities. If we work on a infrastructure level, be it solar or wind, it's typically brought back into the energy generated is typically brought back into the grid, and those are not necessarily benefits the community where those equipments are installed directly. So yeah, so that's a discussion we are having on the investment side within Oikocredit, and I hope to come back to you over the next few months with more answers. For your knowledge, for those who are not members of Oikocredit, we are now working on a new 2022-2026 strategy, and we hope to be able to come up with a few answers over the next few months.
Thank you.
Back to you, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yves. It's really been a pleasure to see you and speak with you today. There are many other questions we didn't have time for, and I hope we'll have a chance to continue the conversation at some point. As many of you know, we mentioned earlier, when you've joined the webinar today, Zoom has automatically assigned you the name Matt Eldridge. I see there are about 20 Matt Eldridges. Whatever your name is and whatever country you're connecting from, we appreciate you taking time to join us today. I'll now turn it back over to my colleague, Julie with Oikocredit Canada.
Thank you for all these thoughtful questions, and thank you for joining us today. And Yves, merci à vous for describing, sharing your personal experience on the ground working for Oikocredit. We appreciate all that you do to help the cooperative make a positive impact through investing in West Africa. This webinar series is made possible by generous donations from people like you. To learn more about Oikocredit or how to support our mission to improve living standards in low-income countries, visit our websites at oikocreditus.org or oikocredit.ca. On behalf of everyone at Oikocredit in North America, thank you for your support. See you soon. A bientôt.